Well, good night, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, we've got some technical difficulties, so we can't do the live stream tonight, unfortunately. Right now, the gentleman here preparing his goggles is Joey Marcosi. How are you doing, Joey?
I am good. It's actually Marsace.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. That's why most people call me Grim.
Okay.
Easier to say. Although they mess that up too from time to time. So
Okay. Well, yeah, we've got a lot of technical difficulties. You couldn't hear the sound, so we had to make all kinds of last-minute arrangements. Next to me, by the way, is Natalie Croyen. She
Yes,
is
hi.
a writer, and actually, you have a publication in the United States, right?
In Canada,
Oh, in
actually, in Vancouver. Yeah, I made a short film. We won a contest, and because of that, we were able to make the film. So, yeah, I'm really proud of it.
So yeah, that was our co-host for tonight. Right now I'm trying to find my questions for the gentleman here. But Joey, let's just start with who is Joey Marsace and Dr. Grimm, for that matter.
well, I am out of Middletown, Connecticut, over here in the States. I own a business formerly known as Dr. Grimm Laboratories, and it's now Grimm Studios. And basically, besides everything to do with steampunk, which I had been in for quite a while before I even knew the term, I do steampunk art. I have some publications about steampunk. I also do curate exhibits, and besides the steampunk world, I do creature effects and puppetry and concept renders for both steampunk projects and events. I come from a background of film, animation, and theme park design, and kind of do a little bit of everything in between. So for the past, I guess, let's see, there was a good 5 to 7 year run where I was Dr. Grimm of Dr. Grimm Laboratories, which basically was an alias of the character behind all of the different types of machines that I built, which eventually turned into a personality that I would travel to conventions to perform as, and also do maker panels and things like that. He's a totally different character than me, not a very nice guy, but he's okay. He's okay if you give him some whiskey and a cigar.
Okay, right.
Good to know.
Good to know. Well, I want to talk to you about that later on in the interview. Excuse me.
Oh,
Okay.
I poisoned your water bottle.
That was it. But you also do a lot of mainstream work, I noticed on your website. So let's start with that. What kind of mainstream work do you do?
Well, on the outside of steampunk world, most of the, I guess, mainstream work that I do currently is doing concept renders. I work either between steampunk, a steampunk design aesthetic, or I work in the haunt industry, and sometimes the two mix. Some of the work that I'm doing right now, event-wise, is doing events for children, so nothing scary about that at all. But I also work within the haunt industry, so there is a place here called Sleepy Hollow, New York, which has a very large haunt, and I'm one of the designers for it. I design some of the creature effects, some of the set pieces and things like that, and also work on the story for it. And outside of that, I also work with a gentleman who's pretty well known within the steampunk community named Bruce Rosenbaum of Modvic. And we've been working together on and off over the years, but more so recently. And although most of the projects that he's working on are very top secret, I basically collaborate with him and do his bidding. No, I do his concept rendering of different things ranging from restaurant design work, interiors, and display pieces, educational pieces that are mixed with vintage pieces and steampunk style. And I've also, on my own, have done different steampunk contraptions and fine art displays for hotels such as the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas. I work with clients such as Foundry Cigars, and I've built things for them for their trade shows. So I kind of do a little bit of everything in that area.
Yeah, well, that was one of my biggest challenges with arranging this interview, because you've done so incredibly much. You know, it was hard to, you know, try to get to the core of what you do.
Yes. I have trouble with that on my own daily as well.
Okay. because you already mentioned a lot of your projects. What project or creation people might know you without realizing it?
Let's see. Probably one of the smallest pieces I ever built, but one of the things that kind of people know me as in the steampunk community was the steampunk iPod, which was probably the first thing that I posted out there that kind of went worldwide as far as the web is concerned and launched Dr. Grimm into the steampunk fans. But as far as work that I've done that people don't know, my background being in theme park design, a lot of the work that's kind of floating around out there, for instance, back in, I'm going to say 1993, so many moons ago, working with Disney Imagineering on the 20,000 concept renders for the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea adventure that eventually was placed in Tokyo Seas and in Disneyland Paris.
That's the same Nautilus they used for the 1950s version of the movie, right?
Yes, exactly. So it's based on that, but it's also based on Jules Verne's Mysterious Island, the second in the series. So way back then, me and two other gentlemen, one of which currently works with Disney Imagineering, Christopher Merritt, who's busy with Shanghai Disney at this point in time. But way back then, we had put together the concept renders for what is now seen in Tokyo Seas, which is more of a walkthrough of Captain Nemo's submarine and Mysterious Island. So that's one of those things that actually launched me into the world of steampunk, because people had seen that I worked on it, said that my design was steampunk, yet I didn't know what the word was. So to me, it was just a style that I'm used to, which is working in the style of kind of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells and Mary Shelley anyway.
Yeah, well, what year was that?
That was 1993.
Okay. So, yeah, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so that was many moons ago, and there's several other, both Disneyland and Universal Studios attractions that I kind of had a hand in helping to design scenes and create characters and things like that. Toontown in Disneyland is one of them. Jurassic Park: The Ride at Universal Studios. So some of those things, although not steampunk, I've had my hand in, and it's not a very well known thing, but it's I'm one of many cogs in the machine to help bring those things to life.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I actually wrote a piece on this on my blog before, but it seems that Disney has a large impact in the long run on steampunk when you think about it.
It does. I think especially over the past 4 years, and realizing it's the popularity of steampunk, which admittedly some of their design work in the parks has already reflected steampunk, and I guess that's kind of the point of how I fell into it. Being that their work is of an older, either old literature based or even things like The World of Imagination, which was a very steampunk-inspired piece. I don't think there was a term for it back then when it was being designed, but it's certainly, now realizing within the past few years that it's in the mainstream and how popular it's gotten. They're certainly pushing forward their design aspect and having, kind of steampunk art displays at Disneyland and at Disney World and things for sale that are steampunk inspired. So, like with anyone else in the major marketing world, their eyes are turned towards steampunk and are trying to make it more mainstream. And I think they've had a good handle on the design aspect of it, which is really the key part of it.
Yeah, well, it was not kind of off topic on what I intended to go with, but was the term retrofuturism used back in those days?
It wasn't, actually. I mean, I know when we were working on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, there was no, even though I guess the term had been around in Jeter's books, but it wasn't referenced, and nor was that term referenced either.
Right.
I think the style was simply, if we were working on something that was in the writings of Jules Verne, we just referred to it as a Vernian style.
Vernian style. Okay, that's a nice approach to it. Because I feel that a lot of retrofuturism is confused with steampunk. Whenever something is, both history and futurism put together, we often call it steampunk right away. And one of the reasons for that is probably that people aren't even aware the term exists. Or that it's a separate, not a separate form of art, but, there are other retrofuturistic aesthetics out there that combine past and future in general.
Well, definitely. I think, when it comes to, there's obviously on the internet there are plenty of people who think steampunk is this and not that, and there's a lot of that goes around, and it's good, eating popcorn to watch the comments. But realistically, we got to a point with saying steampunk is this, and nobody agreed on it. And certainly when you throw time travel into the mix of designs, it turns into a whole other animal.
Yeah.
So I don't think there is really, no matter what definition has been placed out there, there really is still no real definition of what steampunk is. I think Hollywood's gotten to a point where they have put a description to it, but I don't think it's not accurate. It's just simple enough for the general public to understand.
Yeah, I agree. Like I have some articles which are my best read articles for some reason, which I simply called Real Steampunk Is, which basically is it's three things: its community, its stories, and its visual design. And I try to keep those three apart when discussing these topics.
Yes.
But let's move on because otherwise this is all we will talk about on this channel. But how you already talked a bit of how your creative career started. How did you get into your creative profession before Disney and all that?
I mean, I've been interested in so many different types of arts since I was a kid, but one of my main focus was entertainment and film and animation, which was my goal back before entering college. The college I went to is called California Institute of the Arts, which is founded by Walt Disney. It is a hub for all of the arts, and it's in California. And once I landed there, and I was really interested in character design and storytelling and all the aspects of making a film or an animated film. But I found that I gravitated more towards theme park design because I was also a model maker, and I had all these different elements of things that, at the end of the project, you're seeing something that you can step into and not just see on a screen. So that was much more in my mindset to gravitate towards as a career. And even after I left doing events or theme park design, I still kept with theming things. I mean, everything that I build has a story to it. It's the details behind the things that are really important to me, and that carries all the way back to when I was a kid. So it certainly has its place in telling a story within a theme park attraction. But I think that's why I gravitated towards, steampunk gravitated towards me and vice versa. But I think it was the level of detail, going out there after I found out that it was a thing, quote unquote, and researching the artists and such that were doing all these wonderful, creations and Datamancer and Bruce Rosenbaum and different people who were like kind of at the start of when steampunk started to become a subculture. It was at that point that I realized that bringing these artists together, such as with curating exhibits or with my book, 1000 Steampunk Creations, it really allowed me to get out there and find the artists that were making steampunk a reality and not just a term. Because that's really the thing to me, is that the only definition that I would give steampunk is that it's an art form. Just like any other art form, it evolves. And that's where I think we see it going. But the internet always has to throw in its good share of bickering and such. But I think the good thing about it is that it's allowed these artists to take this world that didn't exist and turn it into a reality in much more of a vision than I think we even had 5 years ago. And that's due to the conventions, the maker, the maker world, and exhibits that happen all over the world. I mean, they just keep growing and growing as years go by. And I think I danced around the topic of what you just asked, but hopefully I returned back to it.
No, it was a great answer because, I feel that steampunk is more accessible to the general audience and therefore easier to bring into reality. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it's been interesting to see the growth in the community, and I can't even imagine where it's going. But I will use as a reference your friend and mine, Dave Lee of Hackney Cross Steampunk, who is one of those people that I completely found by accident, and has he's always the person that I kind of when I reference steampunk as where it's going and where it's come from, he's one of the people that I mention most. And this isn't just sucking up to Dave. He's genuinely just a very creative person, and he does it for fun. He does it for the art of it. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing that I think a lot of people miss. I mean, surely there are people, I do this for a career, so it's a little bit different.
Right.
There's still a fun aspect to it, but it's a legitimate business with meetings and technical diagrams and budgets and timelines and deadlines and all of that. So steampunk to me is a very, it's a very real world because it's helping me to pay for my children and right. Things like that. So not pay for my children. I don't pay for children. Let me just say that. But it allows me to be able to live. It's a job, but I still enjoy it. And because there's a little bit of the word aside, taking the word steampunk out of it, it doesn't matter what the heck it is because it was never a term to me to begin with.
Yeah.
It's an art style. So it's an art style that I still grow on and elaborate on and learn from other artists. And that's why I brought up Dave, because I think he has a great vision that, you know, I mean, and he works with this whole family, which is just awesome. I think that's one of the greatest things about what Hatton Cross Steampunk is that it's a family thing. And, you know, he to me, what he does is kind of the pinnacle of what steampunk should be. You know, coming from it from, you know, it's not just a hobby for Dave. It's just how he thinks. And I can relate to that because it's like my brain's always on thinking of, you know, not only what's the next thing that I can create, but how can I go to a client and pitch this and then bring it to reality so you could go into a hotel and see this thing for real.
Mm-hmm. Does it ever, because it is your job, are there moments that you say, do I have to do this again? You know, because that's what I hear from some steam makers who do this as a job as well. Do you have that issue?
It doesn't really. I don't think it. I mean, there's certainly, it depends on which side of the job you're talking about. I mean, there's like any job, it can be exhausting. You know, I'm pretty much designing in my head 24/7, but on top of that, being a manager of the, you know, being the accountant and being sure that, you know, I'm a project manager, so there's all those different aspects of it. But I think what it comes down to is that you know, it's not like I don't go to a convention with a bunch of things that are kind of the same and sell them. Like, that's not what I do as a business. And that, you know, when you go to conventions and stuff, some people live off of doing that. Mm-hmm. And I can see where that can be tedious, because if you want to make 40 corsets that are the same, you know, or mildly the same, that can get tedious. And I think if you don't stretch your imagination, that's where it starts to get tedious and you start to pull away. You know, and these are the people that go from the LARPing conventions to the steampunk conventions to the, you know, so they bring their wares from different place to place, and then they change what they're doing based on who their clientele are. With me, I never sell the same thing twice. So if a client comes to me, or if I go to a client with an idea, it's unique to begin with. And then there's the process of you know, what's the story behind it? How is it going to interact with people? How do people interact with it? So that's what keeps it interesting for me. I don't think I get to the point where, oh, I have to do this again. You know, certainly we all have our clientele that are difficult to work with, but I think that's been the good thing about how I interact with people and really kind of, you know, take this line drawing and bring it to life, or even just take their idea and put it down on paper, you know, because that's the start of it, is the illustration behind it, the concept render. If I can get them at that point to be really enthralled in the project, then I'm enthralled in the project. So, you know, there's certainly, if they're just in it for, oh, we just need something steampunk and we don't care what it looks like, but put gears on it, I'm not going to take that project. I may hand it off to somebody who does do that.
Yeah.
Because it's probably best for them to work with somebody who can just generate something that's basic. I don't do basic.
Right.
You know, so that's why I think it's good to know, you know, that over the years that there's been plenty of projects that people have come to me with, and if it's not something that's in my wheelhouse, I will suggest other steampunk artists out there. And I think that's what's nice about, you know, what I've been able to do over the years, both with the books and with the gallery shows, is to recommend other artists for things that they're really good at. So that makes it not tedious.